Coming up on today's episode of Real Talk Rentals, we're going to talk about inspections. What's allowed and what's not allowed when inspecting a property. Welcome back to Real Talk Rentals, a podcast brought to you by OnQ Property Management. We're here to give you all the behind the scenes on owning an investment property and everything that goes into it. I'm Ben, I'll be your host, and with me as always is Mr. Eric Dixon, the go-to expert on everything rental property in Arizona and just kind of in general, which is good because today we're going to talk about something that doesn't seem like on its surface there's a lot to it, I think, but once you dig in, there's more than you might think, and that's inspections. I could say personally, before I started working at OnQ, I only thought there was one kind of inspection. It was they come, they look at everything, and they leave. Yeah. That's it. That's all I thought there was. But there's a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe we just start, Eric, and you kind of walk us through the different kinds of inspections and what they're for if you're using a property management company. Okay.
Yeah. No. And what's funny is the first thing that comes to mind when you say inspections is my favorite TV show, Inspector Gadget, growing up. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
Dude, it's the best. Now, if we could only get our inspectors to have all the Inspector Gadget qualities,
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, that theme song, you're talking and it's like, dun, 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 dun. Anyways, so, all right, that tangent's done. The inspections in the property management world, though, there are just your simple, most property management companies do at least two, the move in and the move out. And
right.
We'll get to that, right? One is to document before and one's to document after, and that should be it. But really, for us and a lot of more seasoned property managers, or ones who have been doing it a long time, it actually starts from day one. And from the day the relationship starts, and you go document and you do an inspection to determine the rent readiness of the home. Like, is this ready to rent? Is it clean? Is the paint good? Did the blinds work? Are the appliances working? Or,
right.
That sort of stuff. So
this is before someone maybe even applies.
Oh, yeah.
It's just bringing the property on.
Oh, yeah. This is just bringing it to market, right? And It's like, let's say you're hiring us, Ben, and you say, hey, my house is ready. Well, we do an inspection, turn on every faucet, flush every toilet, document the cleanliness, that sort of thing. And then we make sure it's rent ready. Sometimes we're like, man, this place is spick and span. It's perfect. Let's schedule pictures right away.
Right.
Oftentimes there's a couple of things, right? And I look at it like our longtime listener, Matt, is
a friend of the pod.
Yeah, there we go. He's in this boat too, where like he's moving and he's going to be a landlord now for the first time. And he's been signing clients up for years. And now he's wearing these shoes of crap. Now I'm the landlord.
Yeah.
And all these projects that I knew I was going to do someday suddenly have to be done in order to get a tenant moved in.
We talked about that in our Rent Ready episode, where there's things that you might live with because you've been there forever, where it's like, this door doesn't open. That's fine. I don't go out that way. Just leave it locked. But you can't put it on the market as a rental like that for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
So all that stuff's got to be addressed.
Yep. And so that's the rent ready, right? And sometimes it's us gathering estimates. Sometimes it's just saying, hey, Ben, this room needs painted and maybe you want to do it yourself or whatever. So we'll get you free estimates for the maintenance, maybe recurring services. If you have a pool, we could get you estimates for pool service, landscape service, pest control, different recurring services there. And then I mentioned we'll test the functionality of the major components: AC, heat, appliances, toilets, faucets, sprinkler system, whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of the rent ready inspection. We get through that process, get the house rent ready. Once the house is rent ready, the next inspection, that a lot of people don't call it an inspection, but we call it a marketing inspection, where we would get the photographer, if we're doing any video, if we're doing 3D renderings to do walkthroughs, the 3D walkthroughs you see online all the time. We rely heavily on that technology. So that's the marketing inspection. It gathers all that information, then we can put it in the ads and the listing. And then it's on the market, right? So you'll have somebody apply for the house, they'll get approved and move in. And right before they move in, I'll back up just a hair, is the next inspection. It's the move-in inspection.
Right.
So right before they move in, we'll send our inspectors out and they'll do a move-in inspection, document the home in the condition it's in, and pick up the lockbox, pick up the keys, pick up the sign if there is one, and then the tenants can move in after that. And it protects both parties. It protects the landlord because if the tenants do damage, we can compare the before and after pictures.
Yeah.
But it protects the tenant as well, so that, hey, we did a move-in inspection. That blind was already cracked. Yeah, it doesn't need to be replaced, but it's cracked. So you're not responsible for that on when you move out or any of that stuff. Sometimes carpet, it's cleaned, but there may be a stain or something like that, and we'll document all that.
Yeah.
So it protects both parties.
I think that's like one of renters' biggest fears is that they're going to get blamed for something they didn't do.
Yep.
Be like, the garage always had this crack in the asphalt.
Yep.
And now I'm getting charged for it.
Yeah.
So the move-in inspection, like you said, it helps both parties. It covers them.
No, and we property managers are on, we have to play both sides, right? We're not there we are representing the owner, but we do have to advocate for the tenant and protect them as well, right? And we want to be the in-between to make sure that that's smooth. So far you got the rent ready, you got the marketing inspection and the move-in inspection. The lease is going on, and throughout the lease, we offer it up to 2 times a year. There's a routine inspection is what we call it. And we were talking yesterday, that might be a kind of an on-cue word.
Yeah.
Routine inspection. Some people call it mid-lease inspection, spot inspection, just an annual or a biannual inspection or something. Right. We call it a routine because it's just a routine. We schedule it with the tenant. We send them a certified notice, and they can schedule it if it doesn't work with their schedule. We'll go in and document the condition of the home. It is not to open every drawer, open all the pantry and your appliances. It's to document the overall condition, but also the smell test, if there's pets or not. Just a couple quick, easy ones.
Yeah, we have amazing inspectors here at OnQ in our department, and one thing I see all the time, just looking online about what people are saying about us, and we get compliments all the time because people are nervous, right? They're nervous about having an inspector come to their property. Like
you're trying to stranger get in there, and
you're just coming to try and find something, kick me out, and then they'll say, he came in and said, "Oh, well, we'll fix this." Like if you put this on the portal, or you can put this in to do it, and they'll realize that certain things cover them they didn't even know.
Yeah. No, it's twofold, right? We're sending our own representative. It's an employee of our company, right? It's not some third-party stranger that's coming in.
Right.
And they go in it, hey, I got to document the condition, but I'm here as a human being too. Hey, if your shower is dripping and leaking, you got to turn that in. That's a landlord responsible item, They're not advocating to make sure that landlords do maintenance, but the stuff that they find is stuff that the landlords want done. It's
preventative in a lot of cases.
Preventative maintenance in a lot, like you said, but it's also stuff that the tenant's like, oh, I just lived with it. It's like, man, that's going to do secondary damage.
Yeah.
It's going to, leave rust stains on the sink, So yeah, that's an awesome point. We love our inspectors. They're awesome. And then the last one, so we do want those once or twice throughout the year, depending on what the owner or our client, subscribes to. And then once the tenant gives notice or the landlord gives notice and they move out, we'll do the move out inspection, and then we'll compare that to the move in. And that's how we determine if there are any damages. Going back to the episode about dispositions, we'll use the move out as the documentation portion and get estimates from there if needed, and go from there. So those are the main 5 that at least here at OnQ we do, and I feel like it covers the whole realm of what you would need.
Awesome. So I know you're not a lawyer, but we did do research for this. So I'm going to ask you, what are the rules or laws around inspections? I think you see that a lot where residents, tenants are concerned. They feel like, what are my rights here? Or what are you allowed to come in here? They don't know for sure. So what are the rules and regulations around that?
Well, no, and this is good stuff just to know, because especially for self-managers, a lot of them are breaking the law or breaking the rules without even knowing it. And the tenants are kind of just going with the flow. Right. But if you're self-managing and your tenant does know their rights and does know the notices required, you could get in hot water pretty quick if you just show up. Or we've had it where landlords are like, oh yeah, when they're not home, I just use the key and I just go in.
Oof.
And it's like, oh, don't do that anymore.
That's breaking and entering, actually.
Yeah. So I think break it up between vacant and occupied properties.
Okay.
If the property's vacant, there aren't, notice requirements and so forth. If you're under management, with your property manager. They have access when it's vacant to make sure it's locked up and secure, to take pictures for showings, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
What I do want to say is just use common sense. Don't use the bathroom in the vacant property. Don't turn on, especially in the summer, don't turn on the AC to 70 and then leave it on when you leave. If you're going to be there a while and you need the air conditioning, yeah, by all means, turn it on, use it. But when you leave, put it back up,
right?
To where it was before. And it's just making sure lights are off when you leave, or the lights that were on when you got there, leave those ones on. Maybe the owner wants the front porch light on all night or whatever. So it's using common sense. I'll say it again. Don't use the bathroom, man. I mean, when you're showing houses for sale, for rent, for your own properties, it's like you can stop by QT or, Circle K if that's an issue. Now, occupied gets different, right? So that's when a tenant lives there, they're in a lease. That is their home. As far as legally, they have their rights to quiet enjoyment in that home. And so you do have to send, at least they're talking about Arizona here, 48-hour written notice or an agreed upon time if it's less than that. So sometimes we'll reach out to the tenant and call them and say, hey, something came up. Is there any way the owner could go by tomorrow, or the maintenance or the routine inspector? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to be here. No problem. So if it's a mutually agreed upon deal, then it could be sooner. But as far as, written notice needs to be at least 48 hours. All the certified mail or communication we do in writing, we try to do far more than 48 hours. To me, 48 hours sometimes just isn't even enough. It's like, so you're telling me you could tell me Monday morning that you're coming Wednesday afternoon no matter what. Yeah. And like, legally, yes, you could do that. But you try and put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. You're like, well, I don't want you to have to call off work for me to do this. So
or maybe we're having a birthday party that day. Can you not come? And like you said, it's their home. You may own that property, but it's their home. Yeah. So like it is important to, Yeah.
And that there are like offshoot examples of like, no, push comes to shove, I have to get in there.
Sure.
And it could be because this is habitual. You're never letting me in. I'm just going to have to put my foot down type thing. Or a classic one is emergencies, right? And it's like, hey, the AC went out. This happens in the summer all the time. And it's like, hey, we got a guy who can go tomorrow at noon. Can we go in? And they're like, well, I'm going to be at work. Do you know what? Just go in with the key you guys have on file or whatever, or I'll leave it unlocked, or they have to get in there, right? And so in the emergency, you just kind of figure it out. Another emergency is if there's smoke coming from inside the house, something's on fire, or there's water coming out of the garage, we as the management company and the landlord have permission to enter to figure that out, so
we don't have to send a letter. It says we'll be there in 2 days.
Yeah, sorry, we're just going to let this burn down. No, so those emergencies, it sounds silly, but those are actual in the statutes there in Arizona. They're detailed out in writing, like, hey, in emergencies you have permission to enter. Other than that, though, the landlord's got to step back and realize this isn't your home anymore as far as use of it, and so yes, your name's on title and you own the house, but the use of the house is now the tenants for that duration of the lease. And unless you obey without those notices, you can't go in.
Right. Okay. So talking about inspections, then let's talk about how they are documented. I've seen everything from like just a paper check, that someone's filling out, but do you feel pictures are essential, necessary? Are they required? What is required to make a good inspection in your mind? Yeah,
so it actually starting in like 2010, 11, when I got from more into property management from real estate sales initially, I didn't really know any better. And the move-ins didn't require pictures. Us as a management company, we take some pictures and the marketing photos and stuff, but the tenant's move-in form was just like good, fair, bad, great, whatever. And they check boxes. If they want, they can email pictures. And it was kind of annoying. Like, oh, you're going to email all these pictures. It's like 2010. It just wasn't as easy to receive hundreds of photos and upload them to a cloud and, store them for the duration of the lease and all that stuff. Nowadays, 2023, it's like expected. It's like, oh, you could take a couple hundred photos. They'll shoot up to wherever you're storing them. You'll have access to them forever. They'll be time-stamped, organized by address, by move-in date, all that stuff. So pictures are a must now.
Right.
And again, it's to protect the tenant and the owner, both sides. There's videos are helpful. We do 3D renderings with the Matterport technology that does, it captures everything in 3D. So it's like a lot of that is you could do an inspection and it's like the walls look great. There's no holes in the walls. It looks freshly painted. Man, they took really good care of it. But sometimes you don't realize until you compare the 3D renderings side by side, like that this whole room was green when you moved in. Now it's black, or it looks great, but it's black, right? Or whatever. And a lot of times just the wall by wall inspections, you don't realize to compare some of that stuff.
It's funny that you said when you first started about the list, tell a story about when I first lived in a rental. When I first got married, we lived in this little one bedroom apartment in Huntington Beach, right? Best place you could live as a newlywed couple. We're like steps from the beach. It was awesome, right?
It sounds amazing right now.
Yeah.
I'm not newly married, but it sounds amazing.
Little tiny place. I mean, not too much bigger than this room, right? But when it's just two of us, that's all we need. So when we move in, we got like a move-in inspection form, and I took pictures. This is with an actual digital camera. I didn't have like a smartphone to do that. I filled this thing out every inch, right? Like, oh, there's a little crack here, this and that. And this is an old house, so there was a lot of little things. Your
first rental as a married couple, you're like, I'm going to do this right.
Exactly, right? And our security deposit was $1,000, right? So we stayed there for 2 years, then we kind of outgrew it. And we're like, are we going to move to a bigger place? And the landlord, she was great, got along with her, awesome. She shows up at my work with an envelope of cash.
Just unannounced?
She didn't even look at the move-in inspection, right? She didn't even ask for a copy of it. I was like ready, like, hey, I got everything you need. And she gave me $800 and said, it was pretty clean. And that was it. And I was like,
pretty clean is a $200 charge.
Yeah. And I honestly, like, I was so taken aback. And also I'm just like, I was young, I was early 20s. And I was just like, okay, thanks.
Like, is this pretty good?
Yeah.
80% of my money back?
This feels all right. I'll take this. So it's funny, like, to think back then, I thought that was perfectly like, I did pretty good. Got my $800 back. But, without all those pictures and stuff, you think of what we do now, documenting against that move on, I probably would have gotten
all your money back, or you'd be able to fight it a little bit. So there's a couple things that just have changed. They've evolved since you rented and since I've been in it. Is the tenants would document it just like you did, and you held on to that for a year or 2 years, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't have a place to like give it to the landlord through a portal or through an email. That's like it'd be tough to send by email 15 years ago 100 photos.
Oh yeah.
What do you send, an SD card, and say, hey, don't lose that. And so the tenants would hold on to this stuff, and then the property managers are doing the disposition, and they don't even know that the tenant had those photos until they're fighting them for the money. So what's evolved since then is kind of there's two parts with how you document inspections now. It's obviously the more pictures, the better. If you can do it by organized in a fashion where this is the master bedroom, the bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, like we have it down to where you start at a certain spot and then you always go clockwise, and then you go to floor 2 and go clockwise. And so we always know bedroom 4 is going to be where it is, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of that within our company, but the whole point is you have that actual inspection. It's got the pictures, descriptions, the breakdowns. And then you have the second part is the accessibility. Like the property manager, the tenant, and the owner need access to these things. Yeah. Through whether nowadays it's in a portal or an online login or somewhere where it's saved. Throughout the lease, they can jump into their move-in inspection anytime, their routine inspections anytime, their spot inspections anytime, marketing inspections, and their rent-ready inspections, then their estimates and their work orders. All that has to be accessible. If it's not, you got to find a property manager that has that technology, because you should be able to grab your phone at any time and say, I wonder what the move out inspection looked like last week.
Sure.
You pull it up. Unfortunately, what day is it? It's January 10th. I had an abandonment today. One of my tenants just skipped out yesterday.
Oh, bummer. So
before this recording, 2 minutes before this, property manager's like, hey, come over. Here's the inspection, man. You just showed up. And what is incredible about it is there was somebody there, 45 minutes ago, documented it real quick. They haven't finished. I just saw that it's uploading, right?
Yeah.
And I get to see the pictures. I don't have to drive over there. I don't need to drop everything tonight and go see what it looks like and get my own vendors and do all this stuff. That by the time this is done recording, I'll be able to go look at the inspection and say, hey, this is what's wrong. This is what we need to do. I could show my wife at home tonight because we'll just jump in on our laptop and look. So the accessibility factor is almost just as important.
Sure.
Because it saves the landlords who have hired these management companies it saves them time and energy, and it just puts you at ease that, yeah, it does suck that they just disappeared and they took off yesterday, but we're already on it. Next day, we're on it. We got the inspection, got it rekeyed, and it's going to start getting work done this week.
Right. Especially, I mean, you're fortunate if you live in state, close to those things. I mean, imagine if you lived in like Texas or something. It's like you can't drive by.
Well, no, I was looking at my calendar going, okay, it's 50 minutes away. I'm going to get home at this time tonight. I wonder what time I could go tonight. And then I'm like, I don't need to go. Like the inspection is already done. All I'm going to do is validate that the pictures they took are correct.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, I need to, practice what we preach and say, no, you depend on the technology and the management service to do that stuff. So it's just ironic that I'm like, dude, I'm looking at a horrible inspection right now.
Yeah.
Right before we talk about it. So.
Yeah. Well, it's better, I guess, to know than not know, right?
No, I know. Yeah, exactly.
That'd be a long drive over there where you're just anticipating.
Yeah, I'm like, why haven't we got rent yet? It's the 10th of the month. So we kind of were anticipating something. And then, heard the news today.
Yeah. All right. So just for the last little thing I wanted to touch on, and again, we're not legal experts. We did research to look this up, but you should definitely look up your state and everything. But from a resident perspective, and this is by far the thing I see most searched online, you type in, property inspections, it's residents asking, what are my, what are my rights here? You know?
Yeah, and what are my protections that the landlord can't just like show up and walk in?
Yeah. So I think from a resident perspective, let's touch on that and just say like what are they allowed in this process to say and not say?
Yeah, and actually, so I copied and pasted from a statute a little bit. Just this is Arizona, just to kind of give you a broad sense of it. But the tenant shall not unreasonably withhold consent to the landlord if there was the 48-hour notice, or if it's an emergency with smoke coming out or water coming out of the house, or if it's one of those declared emergencies, or if they give proper notice, they can't refuse the house. And if they do, then there's legal options to gain access, and it becomes sticky and it's going to end horribly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the landlord can't harass them and can't, make it super inconvenient on purpose. And you can't do a routine inspection every single month. It's not reasonable.
You mentioned that when you said that we only do 2 a year.
Yeah, up to 2 a year.
Up to 2 a year. Like you can't say like, hey, every 3 weeks I want to pop in.
Yeah, and you think about it. So there's a 12-month lease. Say there's average leases are anywhere between 20, 24 months. But let's say it's a 1-year lease. We do a move-in at month 0. You do a routine inspection on month 4 and 10. And then you're doing, if they move out at the end of the 12 months, you do a move-out inspection. And it's like, there's been an inspector in there 4 times in 12 months.
Plenty.
There's plenty of documentation. 2 of them were when it was vacant, and 2 of them while it was occupied. And a lot of people ask, like, well, why do you need to do that second one at month 9 or 10? And a lot of times that helps you determine if you want to renew the lease.
Sure.
It's like, hey, this place is in great shape. They said they had a dog and they have a dog, or hey, they said they had no pets and they have 3 dogs. I don't know if I want to renew this lease,
right?
Or whatever. So there's just, and some owners, they opt to do 1. So it's like, hey, do you know what? I just want 1 somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
Give me a kind of a gauge of where things are at. But it's kind of a 2-way street. The landlords, you got to give notice. You have to be reasonable. You can't intimidate. You can't harass. You just need to be a human being and realize, what take it for what it is. It's their home. Like you have to realize that. And luckily for property managers and luckily for tenants in this regard, we are kind of the barrier, because a lot of owners, they would just show up. Yeah. And they'll call us and say, hey, my flight lands tomorrow. Can you let the tenant know I'm coming by tomorrow night? And I'm like, whoa. Like there's a chance
not doing that.
We could call them and see, but if they say no, like you canot go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, I have a key. It's like, about that.
Yeah.
Stop by the office first. So anyway, it's just being reasonable. And then the tenant, you just got to be reasonable.
Sure.
You do have a right to have quiet enjoyment in the home. That's kind of the lingo in the statutes and stuff. And I think if both landlord and tenant realize kind of their place in the whole lease, then everything usually works out fine.
Yeah. I think you said it great where you said it's their home now, the tenants. And going back to one of our first episodes, we talked about as a owner, this is not your home anymore. You have to stop looking at it as a house and look at it as an investment.
Yeah,
if you can't do that, you shouldn't be a landlord.
Yeah, it's an investment that provides housing for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And yes, you have rights to the ownership and it is yours technically, but it's like it's actually it's a beautiful thing that can provide that for them, but you have to give that to them.
Yeah. Just to finish up, I just want to touch on when we were looking this up yesterday. Do you remember we saw that story about a tenant who the owner would come by and sometimes stay the night?
Oh, dude!
When they were in town, and so he kicks in for utilities, but
no. He said, hey, he separately locked the garage to be his own little and has a couch in there, and he's like, occasionally I'm just going to come crash in the garage, and because of that, I'll give you a break on utilities, or something of $60 a month.
Yeah.
So it's like they lose the garage, access to the garage, and they've got some rando, aka the owner, just showing up whenever he wants to crash. And it was $60 a month they got or something. You're like, oh my gosh.
And this poor person is like so confused in the situation. The best they can do is go.
No, they go on a forum. On a forum,
yeah.
Hey, what would you guys do in this? It's like on Reddit, and it's like, move.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if you were living in that home as an owner and someone was like, hey, don't use the garage, I'm going to come sleep. You wouldn't put up with that.
Yeah, no. And
it's insane.
It's one of those things that mid-lease is like, hey, by the way, I'm taking over the garage. It's okay. I'm going to pay you $60 a month for it. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's crazy.
There are crazy scenarios. And that happens to be one of the self-managing nightmares right there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we covered inspections, just about all the ins and outs of it. So that's for us this time. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. It really helps out. And we'll see you next time.